Om Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana Hridayanto Stihi Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhrutsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are going to continue our discussion of the first canto. The previous session we focused on chapter 9, which was the departure or the passing of Bhishma Dev. And there were very, very important lessons which we had to learn from the previous chapter that was 2 weeks back. I would encourage those of you who did not have a chance to be a part of the session to go back and listen to the archives or the YouTube videos, because there was a lot which was to have been gained from those sessions. Now, what we will do is we would go on to chapter 10. This is quite an extraordinary chapter, and this is basically the departure of Lord Krishna for Dwaraka. And there are quite a few unusual circumstances that are being discussed here. So it's the departure of Lord Krishna for Dwaraka. And the unusual circumstances are simply the different experiences of devotees and the class of devotees and those who were around him. And it is important for us to understand it just so that we can have some reflection on what it would be to have Krishna around us, or what would it be to be a part of his personal entourage. What is the experience? And it is just quite interesting to see the different experiences and the different emotions being shared. And there's also a certain focus, a very important focus in this chapter has to do with arrangements for life. Because the chapter starts off with Yudhishthira Maharaj, but the reins of his role, the emperor. He was previously grief-stricken. He was pacified by Srila Vyasadeva. He was pacified by Krishna. He was also pacified by the instructions of Bhishma Dev. Now, once that concluded, now in a subsequent chapter, he is sobered down from an intense experience of grief. Grief on several counts. Grief on the count of personal loss, grief on the count of actually taking on a position which was actually a resultant of extraordinary violence. For someone who is cultured by peace, someone who is a sadhu, someone who is a Vaishnava, they're not looking for such experiences, because these are very bitter experiences. One of the nature of bitter experiences of suffering is that it takes a long time to remove the blemish from consciousness. When someone goes through an experience which can be called a negative experience in the mode of ignorance, either they have gone through intense suffering due to the separation of a loved one, they've gone through a separation, or rather they've gone through an experience where they have been personally traumatized because of whatever has occurred in their lives. These kind of things which have the mode of ignorance, which is a part of the mode of ignorance, these blemishes take a long time to heal from, because the wounds are very deep, and the suffering prolongs for such a long time because you can't really overcome it easily. So this emotional disturbance which was caused to him was the separation from his relatives who were killed on the battlefield, plus being responsible because he was the one who led the battle formations on the Pandavas' side, being responsible for it, and then feeling philosophically disenchanted, because what is the purpose of all of this for me to just sit and be a king? This is complete disenchantment in terms of risk versus reward, in terms of what is the compensation, what did I gain out of causing such grievous injury and harm to so many people? So these were all questions that were going through his head at this point in time, and he was very grief-stricken. Now, in this particular chapter, we see him taking the reins of government. He is sitting in power, And this is very important for us to understand, because now the Shastra, the verses are saying he is tolerating the circumstances. Normally, someone who comes to power, who is coronated as an emperor, who basically has vanquished the so-called enemies, and he basically is completely free of the anxiety of those who can attack him and so on and so forth, is supposed to feel jubilant and supposed to feel victorious, to some extent, quite, I would say, more, I would say, extrovert in his behavior. Here you find that he's completely sobered down. The Shastra is saying that he basically was tolerating his circumstances. Very important lesson. What was this tolerance? He was not wanting to be an emperor. He was not wanting to have kingship at the cost which he paid. He was not wanting to have anything to do with power because he was perfectly a sadhu. However, this duty was imposed on him by the Lord. And duty is being performed by him with no attachment. He is tolerating the circumstances of duty, but executing the duty per Krishna's desire. This is very important for us because we sometimes question the necessity for performing action in this world whilst being in devotional service. Why have a job? Why maintain the family? Why do this? Why do that? All of this seems to be too cumbersome. Why not just take up a life which is far more easier, where we don't really need to do any of this? That kind of renunciation is renunciation and passion. We are inconvenienced by the position. If we are glorified at the job front, and if we are being commended, and we are giving promotions, and we are given raises by the boss, and we are rising up in your career, then no one wants to really talk about it as an unpleasant experience. No one wants to say, I want to give that up and become Krishna conscious. I want to sit in a bhajan kutir and focus on my chanting. Normally, this vairagya, this aspect of renunciation, comes due to disinterest, because the job front is not treating you well. The economics of the job front are not very good. In general, the overall aspect of just leading life, where you go to work and you come back and you maintain the family, etc., is extraordinarily like a chore, where you really feel it's a burden. Now, when you start feeling something is a burden and you want to give it up, then that's the mode of passion, because you really are wanting to renounce because it's not very comfortable and you're suffering into it. It has nothing to do with the decision of whether it is enhancing or not enhancing devotional service. One has to be very careful in understanding this concept of wanting to give up, because there are many, especially amongst us, who would be very comfortable not working. It is not because they have no interest in material life. It has more to do with a lack of interest in dealing with material nature in terms of arranging for things, because they find it extraordinarily uncomfortable. It's suffering for them, which is not wrong. But the point I'm trying to make here is that giving up duty based on whether it's convenient and not convenient, whether it's comfortable, whether uncomfortable, that is not dharma. That isn't the mode of passion. Because when you start evaluating things based on attachment and aversion, that's the mode of passion. I'm attached to doing this because I like what it is coming from, where it's coming from. I like the pleasures that are involved with a certain activity. And then I do not like this because it's giving me pain. As a consequence, I would like to give it up. That is the mode of passion. So one has to be very careful in evaluating the circumstances of life simply based on whether something is convenient and not convenient. Then the question then arises as to what is the benchmark? What is the barometer for us to be able to reach conclusions of what is to be done and what is not to be done? The only safest barometer and most recommended barometer is to see the aspects of devotional service. The aspects of devotional service, are they being cultured? Are they being promoted by this activity? Am I being situated in a place where I can gain from this activity and I can enhance it? Or am I being able to perform my duties, the duties that are necessary? They may not give me pleasure, but I'm performing my duty to the best of my ability. And I'm also doing what is required to push forward towards bhakti. Now, what happens in this combination is that when you set up a plan, in life which is pillared, or rather founded on the principle of wanting to progressively improve in Krishna consciousness, when your plan is to improve in Krishna consciousness, resources for life will come from Krishna. This is faith. Resources for life will be provided for by the calling upon of the holy names. One has to tolerate the present circumstances, make a plan for the future of wanting to have more and more opportunity to engage in the foundations of bhakti, Panchanga bhakti. When you start really focusing on the foundation of bhakti, whilst tolerating the present and performing your duty to the best of your ability, then the resources for reaching the end goal of becoming less and less encumbered and burdened by the so-called aspects of material life would naturally occur, because Krishna will make the arrangement. One should be ready to downsize. This is the Grahamedi conception. This is the Grahastha conception. The Grahamedi conception is you get educated, you progress, and then as you make progress in life and you accumulate more and more wealth, you expand on your liabilities as well. Greater the salary, bigger the mortgage, more number of cars. Great burden. Then once that burden is on you, then you start thinking that how is it am I supposed to give all of this up, and how can I reduce this burden? That could be tough years at the workplace. That could be tough years overall where you don't feel enthused to work, because that's the nature of material energy, that everything that you experience has a certain duality about it. If you don't have a plan for the future, which is founded on the principles of Krishna consciousness, where you are examining your life and saying, I really would love to dedicate more of my time to service. I would love to dedicate my time to the principles of bhakti so that I could focus on moving forward in Krishna consciousness. But I would also like to ensure that I do my duties. Krishna, can you kindly give me the intelligence so that I would be able to move forward, and I would be able to ensure that I don't get entangled by my arrangements, because we don't know. For all our wonderful planning, we only know how to complicate our lives. This is history. This is history. Every one of us, if you just sit down and reflect on history, our own personal life history, we will find that we have taken decisions to complicate things. We have never taken decisions to move towards Krishna consciousness consciously. We haven't been able to do so. The reason is because there's a culture of thinking which is required. A culture of thinking which is required, where we start understanding that being close to Krishna is where we ought to be. When we start having a culture, an internal culture, and we start watering and feeding that culture and developing deeper and deeper desires of wanting to bring closer and closer to Krishna consciousness, then what would happen is the external life that manifests would also change. Desiring to be closer to Krishna would manifest assets. It would manifest resources which are arranged by Krishna himself. When something is being arranged by Krishna, it will never interfere with Krishna consciousness. If something is interfering with Krishna consciousness, it is because we have arranged it personally. That's because we never in the past thought about what it would take to be a serious practitioner of bhakti. We desired ourselves over several lifetimes into the circumstance that we are in. If the present circumstances of life are not conducive and they are not supporting pure devotional service, please understand that this is our arrangement. What is the way out? The way out is given in Shastra. The way out is for us to tap into the Shastric aspects of life, tap into the fact that Krishna can make arrangements for us. Krishna, who sustains this entire creation by a fragment of his existence. His entire creation, not just one planet, but the entire creation with billions of planets, he is sustaining it. He has the capacity to sustain us. We need to desire to accept his arrangement. We need to desire to accept his arrangement. And this desiring, accepting circumstances of life can take several years in the making. Krishna consciousness is not a short sprint. It's a marathon. It's a 30-year marathon. It's a 40-year marathon, depending on how we are. Sometimes the marathon runs over lifetimes. So it's a matter of being able to desire an outcome which is always going to be conducive for devotional service. So how do you desire it? You desire this particular outcome by examining what is it which is required on a daily basis. The Panchanga Bhakti Foundation, I'm very fond of constantly talking about Panchanga Bhakti because it's practical and every one of us come in touch with it on a daily basis and it is very easy to do. Yeah, Sadhu Sangha, wherever we are. If you are in the West, if you live in the Western world, which is the case with possibly everyone who is listening to us now, or is in this call, there is a need for purification of the senses. The senses can very closely come in touch with material nature very efficiently if you're in the West. Very important, because you're in the Western world, you're not surrounded by stimulus for Krishna consciousness. As a consequence, the senses are always more profoundly in touch with aspects of material nature. How do you purify those senses? There's a need for Sangha. There's a need for Sadhu Sangha. There's a need for service. Senses have to be purified by physical service. You need to engage in as much service as we can if you're in the Western world, because the stimulus around you is such that it can very easily cover our consciousness and make us think that we are a part of what we would call the norm, the average. It's very easy there, simply because there isn't any positive stimulus. Now, if you are, for example, in a dham, then that is not very easy to happen, because you're always surrounded by temples, you're surrounded by people who are chanting, you're surrounded by the stimulus for devotional service. You can't really be very distracted if you're in a dham. But you're in the Western world, there's a need for stimulus. That stimulus of Krishna consciousness can only come through Sadhu Sangha. Someone with deep faith will have to constantly stimulate us with their faith. Their faith has to enter into our ears, enter into our hearts, establish itself, destroy the nations, and allow us to move forward. That Sadhu Sangha is supposed to propel us towards greater level of use of our limbs. Srila Rupa Goswami is very particular. He is talking about the use of limbs in the service of Krishna. Using our hands in the service of Krishna literally means you're engaging in physical service of some level. You're engaging in service, you're engaging your mind, your psychology, and your physical body in the service of Krishna. This is very important. And the reason why this is important is because this is giving you an opportunity. This is giving you a great opportunity to purify our senses. So what did we speak of? We are talking about being in the West requires purification of senses. Purification of senses requires Sangha. Sangha should lead to service. Very important. And what kind of service? The first motivation of Sangha should be a stimulation in our hearts to chant the holy names. Hare Krishna, can everybody see if you're on mute, please? Because I'm hearing a lot of static. Please examine your phones and your tablets. So, Sangha should stimulate us into the chanting of the holy names, and the chanting of the holy names practically would allow us to engage in service. So, the first principle of being able to wean ourselves off and to be able to set an agenda which eventually would protect us and would make arrangements that are conducive is to take deeper shelter of sadhus, because their faith is required. Faith comes from faith. Bhakti comes from bhakti. Very important. The next principle is to focus on the chanting. In fact, the first principle of Sadhu Sangha is to motivate one to chant. If we are in the West, please engage in service. If you don't engage in service, if you're on your own, if you don't have Sadhu Sangha, it's a very difficult situation, because the stimulus around you is generally designed to bewilder and to take us away from our original consciousness. It's very, very difficult. So please ensure that you accept service at whatever level you can, be it menial service in terms of sweeping, cleaning. This is in fact the most auspicious of all services. If you can clean the premises of Krishna, it's very humbling. It allows us to understand that we are not such and such. It allows us to understand that we don't have a certain qualification. It allows us to understand that we are very, very focused on Krishna consciousness. So what I'm saying is, accept the part of wanting to come to Krishna by ensuring that there's a greater level of participation in service. And it has to come with Sangha. Sangha has to motivate you to chant. Sangha means to be able to chant. If Sangha is interpreted in any other way, then it's a failing. We can't have any other interpretation of Sangha. Sangha means it's a support system which is going to motivate us to chant better and to serve better and to hear Bhagavatam better. The next step is to come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam part is so important because this is the solution for Kali. Srimad Bhagavatam hearing is the solution for Kali. How do we hear? We first come in Sangha, we come in touch with those who have faith, very deep faith, and then we also chant. And when we come in Krishna's names, when we come in touch with Krishna's names, we also come in touch with Krishna through Srimad Bhagavatam. There's no difference between Bhagavatam and Krishna. This in turn would motivate us of wanting to experience Vrindavan. We would want to experience Krishna's life in Vrindavan. This would motivate us. Why? Because if you're chanting sincerely in the Sangha of souls who have deep faith, and you're serving sincerely to the capacity you can under the circumstances that you are in, you're constantly trying to do more, this would naturally lead to desires of wanting to be closer and closer to Leela, where Krishna's Leelas happened. So there would be a desire to be in the Dham, there would be a desire basically to reside in the Dham. All of these would happen in the heart, and this eventually would also lead to appreciate and interact with the deity of Krishna. You see? Being personal with the Lord, because in the previous sessions we talked about impersonalism, being personal with the Lord requires several steps. Our own impersonal dealings, we are all mostly impersonal. There's a lot of impersonalism in our dealings. And what does it mean? It means that basically, even for example, when we walk in and then you may have deities, we may not bow down, we may not recognize the fact that Krishna is there. You can recognize it. When you walk in, are you cognizant in a temple room that Jagannath is sitting there? Are you cognizant that the deities are there? There's Krishna there. Can you behave in a certain way? Can you have a discussion in a certain way? See, the point which I'm trying to make is, for us to be who we are, we need to go through several steps. It requires planning. Our planning has largely been problematic. Our planning being problematic is reflective of challenges that we face today. If we are very honest with each other and we look up our faces in front of the mirror and take an inventory of all the decisions that we have taken and how comfortable and how uncomfortable we are with life in general, we will find that we are quite responsible in many ways of doing things which are not quite more comfortable for devotional service. So there's a need for us to evaluate ourselves. There's a need for us to start thinking about the future, because whatever we think about today is going to create a future. Isn't that common sense? Because the past has created the present. The past has created the present. The present will create the future. If you modify your desires and you modify the input of what life is today, it would create a new future. Now, the beauty is you can desire Panchanga Bhakti because there are elements of your life which you're already practicing, which you're very familiar with. You can desire more of this. You can desire a refinement. You can desire, a higher quality of output. And as you desire all of this, and this desire becomes very prominent, life would change. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita. He says that he would provide resources. He would carry what you lack and he will preserve what you have. There cannot be a lack of resources if we are aligning ourselves with Krishna. He is the source of all power. Yeah? He is the source of all resources. So where can there be a lack of resources? Where can there be a situation where we feel that we are having problems? We can't have problems, because in reality, the closer you go and the closer you go to Krishna, the greater would be our ability to understand what is required. The intelligence will be given. One may question, how would I know what decision I'm taking, whether it's going to be conducive for Krishna consciousness and not conducive for Krishna consciousness? The simple answer is, I don't know. The simple answer is, I do not know if my decision, which I want to take, of moving from one job to the other, is it really going to help me or not help me? I do not know. So how do you evaluate it? Evaluate it on the basis of Panchanga Bhakti. Am I going to have an opportunity for a greater level of participation in Krishna consciousness? Am I going to be having a greater opportunity to serve? Am I going to be able to accelerate my withdrawal from this whole situation? There's nothing wrong in making more money. If you're working for 8 hours and you feel that there's an opportunity where you put in the same 8 hours and the compensation is going to be more, that's intelligence. There's nothing wrong in taking up such an opportunity. There really is nothing wrong. We have nothing to do with being poverty-stricken and impoverished. We have nothing to do with that. Don't get me wrong. We are not interested in posturing in this world. We are not interested in wanting to be poverty-stricken. We are not interested in wanting to be impoverished. We are not interested in any kind of posturing which does not lead us to Krishna consciousness in a deeper sense. So if you're working for 8 hours and you believe that there's another job which can pay you a better amount of money with lesser problems, etc., you should go for it. There's nothing wrong in improvising so that you could be better compensated as you work 8 hours. That's intelligence. There's really nothing wrong with it. Why give up? If for the 8 hours that you put in, you get more compensation, then you don't need to worry about it. The point I'm trying to talk about is that desiring Krishna consciousness for the future and making arrangements for the future, wanting to make a job shift, wanting to move from one community to the other, wanting to basically have a different kind of sangha, all of these need to be examined in the context of whether I'm going to thrive or am I not going to thrive. Now, do we really know whether we are going to thrive by the decision? The answer again is no. But desiring sincerely from your heart that you want to thrive and praying, making prayers to Krishna, saying, Krishna, my own plans have been wrong and I could be very wrong with this one. So I seek your protection. If you believe that what I'm trying to do now is not in my interest in Krishna consciousness, sabotage the plan. If we have faith, you should be able to go in front of Krishna and make this statement, asking him to sabotage whatever we are doing if it is not in line with his desires. Then we are placing our hands into his hands. If we are afraid to make that statement, then we are afraid of Krishna. We don't trust him. Do we understand what we're talking about here? We should be prepared for the changes that come. We should desire Krishna consciousness. We should be prepared for the changes that will come when you place your hands in his hands, saying, Krishna, so far, I have just bungled it up. I haven't really done a great job. So Krishna, I'm placing my hands in your hands. Lead me on. The present plan that I have is such that I want to do X, Y, Z. If that X, Y, Z is not in line with your desires, Krishna, please sabotage them. Then this is protection. You can do this on a daily basis and you step out. If anything were to happen during the day, you would know it's Krishna's plan. Your culture would allow you to accept it. You would also have deeper realizations. The faith would increase. As things make progress in life, you would find a lot of obstacles just disappear. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of power when you're in touch with Krishna consciousness. Immense power. You can make massive changes to your life. Massive. And this requires proper desiring. Because life is a combination of karma, that which you carry from the past, and active desiring. If someone has intense desires to make progress and they don't have enough sukriti, karma, to reach there, Krishna makes the arrangements. So one needs to modify their desires so that it aligns itself with Krishna's plan and the glorious plans which have been given in scripture. When they modify their desires according to those plans, then you're coming in touch with Krishna more profoundly, because these are his plans. The universe is designed to allow these plans to function. The universe is designed to allow these plans to function. Every demigod is supposed to cooperate. Everything can change because this is massive power. He is the source of all power. This is real power, where you come in touch with real power and you allow that real power to modify your life so that you're able to move forward. So this is very important for us to understand, and we should also be brave, and we should have deep faith in Krishna, where we can make the statement standing before him saying, these are my plans. If these plans are not what you think they ought to be, Krishna, then sabotage them, because I really don't want to walk away from you. I do not want to have a plan which 10 years hence is going to cause problems to me in Krishna consciousness. Because I can't see it today. I don't have the vision for me to be able to see 10 years down the line. But Krishna can. So if you allow it, Krishna, we'll let it go forward. Otherwise, I'm completely okay with this. So when we go with these prayer, even if that particular arrangement that we have made is not 100% wonderful arrangement, it can be made wonderful by Krishna's interference. He will make it a wonderful arrangement. You can bring his involvement into this. This is very important to involve him. Very important. Depending on the name, depending on Harinam, depending on Krishna, this is the culture. This is how we ought to be planning. And that is being seen in this chapter. Because what they have done here in this chapter is basically they have agreed with Krishna to go along with his plan to have a massive battle. There have been many casualties, a lot of grief. This is being shown here as to sometimes devotees experience this. What are they processing? They're basically accepting it as Krishna's arrangement. Yudhishthira Maharaj is tolerating his so-called kingdom, being a king, because every time he sits on the throne, he knows it has come at the cost of millions of people dying. He's tolerating it because it is Krishna's arrangement. And as a consequence, they are never away from Krishna's arrangement. It will never interfere with Krishna consciousness because it's being made by Krishna himself. So the gist which I was just wanting to convey in today's class was the fact that there is karma, that which you're born with. Then there are desires that can come because of the karma. We can be influenced by the karmic baggage that we bring into this world. We can develop certain aspirations, certain vasanas, certain ideas because we have baggage. Yeah, that's how it works. Our psychology can basically be influenced by the baggage we bring into this world. And then there's free will. A portion of the karma allows you to act. That free will is only present predominantly in the mode of goodness. So a strategy to modify karma has to be in the mode of goodness, because you can't modify karma in any other mode. It's not possible. In the mode of passion, we are going to be desiring based on the karmic reactions that we carry. In the mode of ignorance, we have no choice. We're going to be pushed into it because we have very little room to maneuver, like an animal. The animal doesn't have much room to maneuver life. They can't plan. They can't move forward. They have to go according to the sensory perception of what they need for the body. So if you want to modify karma, then you need to come to the mode of goodness, because that allows you free will, that allows you some discretion, that allows you some level of resources for you to think through and accept instruction from the super soul. Otherwise, you can't hear anything. Krishna is in the heart. He is guiding us. The intelligence which comes from Krishna into our brains wouldn't come if not for being in a proper consciousness. Higher and higher and higher the consciousness, greater the freedom, which is the reason why we modify our food habits. We modify everything. Why? Because this is greater freedom. It allows us to modify our karmic baggage. So when you have karma which is influencing you and you're increasing your participation in mode of goodness, then the mode of goodness allows you to modify the karmic baggage that you bring in. It allows you to modify the karmic baggage. How do you modify? That's a part of desiring again, because you again slowly, steadily develop desires by coming in touch with scripture. This whole session of Srimad Bhagavatam is to cultivate desires. The actual duty of an efficient preacher is to cultivate proper desires. If that person, whoever is preaching, is efficient, they have the ability to sow seeds of desire in the heart of those who are listening. Then they have the ability to use their freedom to modify their life for the future. This is the process. So now what do we have here? We have karma, the baggage that we bring. That baggage as a package allows us for some free will. In some cases, there's not much available. In some cases, there's a greater degree of free will available. Then we also have the idea of desires. So if you're higher and higher in the mode of goodness, we come in touch with people who have the ability to modify our life, and we also have the ability to desire a future. The mode of passion and ignorance do not give us the freedom to change our future. We go along with what they arrange for us. This is the process. So it's a matter of active desiring. So as a consequence, the strategy involves recognizing that the present arrangement that we have, looking at it and scrutinizing it very honestly, putting things on the table, taking it apart, and then looking at it and saying, what will I do next? How can I rearrange things? The first thing that you ought to do is maneuver yourself into the mode of goodness. Culture yourself to accept the mode of goodness as the main means of existence. Change food habits. Change the culture of when you go to bed, when you wake up. What is it that you do, with the time that you have? This in turn would allow you to plan further and give you some freedom. Yeah. So put things on the table, examine it, move and improve upon consciousness by increasing sadhana, doing it properly, increasing the opportunity for the mode of goodness to come in. And then as you do that, then you have the ability to desire a future. So the sadhana in combination with desiring would lead to a future. The sadhana brings us in touch with Krishna. You have an extraordinarily powerful, most powerful, the summum bonum of all, whom you're coming in touch with when you're calling upon the holy names, whom you're coming in touch with when you're reading, even touching the Bhagavatam. When you combine that with desires that are also aligned with Krishna's desires based on scripture, then what you have is an extraordinarily powerful combination that can modify your life. This is how it works. This is exactly how it works, where we come in touch and then we modify our lives and we move forward, because the future is going to be created in the present, and the future requires certain ingredients. So the question is, can destiny be changed? The answer is yes. If destiny can't be changed, then what is the point in having preaching? What is the point in books? What is the point in even chanting? Why not just go through life and say, take me from one station to the other? The reason why we have all of this is because there's an opportunity for us. There is room to maneuver out of the karmic baggage. There is room for us. That room needs to be understood. We need to understand what is it which is going to give us freedom. First ingredient, mode of goodness. If you're not sattvic, there's no freedom. You're going along with the modes. Greater sattva, greater freedom. What would happen if you are sattvic? If you're sattvic, you would be attracted to things that are sattvic. You would have the ability to offer prayers. Once you offer prayers, you will find someone guiding you. It happens, it's a very natural thing. You will receive instructions on chanting. You'll receive instructions which are connected to scripture. You would be motivated by something you read in the Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita to act. Then your desires change even further. There's a refinement. So this is the beauty of coming in touch with a powerful, powerful system. It has certain components. You need to understand the different components that go into the system. You need to understand what it is going to take for this to work nicely. It's a natural consideration if you want to make something work. Every system has ingredients that make it work, and every system has things that can throw a wrench in the wheels, so to speak. As we say, a spanner in the works where the wheel can stop. So we need to understand how this wheel moves and what is it which is going to make it move nicely. Because we have a long haul. We have 30 years of sadhana to do. We have 40 years of sadhana to do. Wouldn't there be considerations that we have such a long haul and so much left that we make changes today in our desiring, which would allow us to participate in the future? This is important for us to know. We are not animals. We are very conscious human beings, especially as devotees. We are more conscious than most. We are most conscious in many ways because we are in touch with Harinam and Seva. So what I'm trying to say is that this is an opportunity that has to be viewed very carefully, and there are certain practical aspects to it to make it work. And you can make the changes as you go along. And by making the changes as you go along, you would find that there would be need for refinement, but you would also find a lot of help coming our way. We would find a lot of intelligence being given by Krishna on what to do, what not to do. So it's exciting to look forward to. So let's read the chapter so that we understand how they navigated and what happened. This is chapter 10. Shaunakauvacha Hatva Swariktas Pradatattinyo Yudhishthiro Dharmabratam Varishtah Sahanujaihi Pratyavaruddha Bhojanah Katam Pravrittah Kim Akarasittatah. Shaunaka Muni asked, after killing his enemies who desired to usurp his rightful inheritance, how did the greatest of all religious men, Maharaj Yudhishthira, assisted by his brothers, rule his subjects? Surely he could not freely enjoy his kingdom with unrestricted consciousness. This is exactly the point, because Shaunaka Muni basically is asking Sutta Goswami, how is it possible? Did he enjoy the kingdom like an ordinary mundane person who wins a vast kingdom? Because this person is special. Sutta Uvacha Vamsam Kuror Vamsadavagni Nirhitam Samro Yitva Bhavano Harihi Niveshayitva Nija Rajya Ishvaro Yudhishtiram Pratamana Babuvadha. So Goswami said, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the maintainer of the world, became pleased restoring the Kuru dynasty, which had been exhausted by the bamboo fire of anger. They're comparing the destruction to a bamboo fire because the bamboo stalks, if you notice the bamboo stalks in the forest, they're always together. Because there's constant friction due to the winds, fires start from the bamboo. The bamboo plant causes fire because the twigs are very close, there's more agni in them, they cause fire. So he is saying that Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the maintainer of the world, became pleased after re-establishing Maharaj Yudhishthira in his own kingdom, and after restoring the Kuru dynasty, which had been exhausted by the bamboo fire of anger. Because if a proper Kshatriya doesn't sit at the helm, everything else goes to waste. As a consequence, Krishna, who has established governance from Goloka, Balaram expands, he establishes governance in the lower provinces. Now he expands into the three Purusha avatars of Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, Karanodakashayi Vishnu, or in the reverse order, Karanodakashayi Vishnu, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. These are administrative expansions of Krishna. So there is administration which is going on in managing the material universe in a scale which we can't conceive of, because they are talking about one inward breath of Karanodakashayi Vishnu collapsing the creation, external breath remanifesting different planetary systems and universes. So the point we are talking about is that there is management, there is a need for leadership, there is appointment of certain people at certain positions, because otherwise there would be chaos. And to prevent the chaos, they're being basically, Krishna was pleased that he could bring Yudhishthira Maharaj, who was pure, and he could give him the reins of the planet, and as a consequence, he could understand that whatever else is going to follow nicely. Nisamya bhishmoktam atachutoktam pravrita vijnana viduta vibramah sashasagam indra ivajita shrayah Paridyupantam anujanuvartitah. Maharaj, after being enlightened by what was spoken by Bhishmadev, and Lord Krishna, the infallible, engaged himself in matters of perfect knowledge because all his misgivings were eradicated. Thus he ruled the earth and the seas and was followed by his younger brothers. All his misgivings were eradicated because Krishna put him in touch with Vyasadev and Bhishmadev and himself. Kaman vavarsa parjanyah sarva kama dugamahi sisichuhusma vrajan gavah payashodasvatir mudan. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth produced all the necessities of man in profusion. Due to its fatty milk bag and cheerful attitude, the cow used to moisten the grazing ground with milk. Basically, the cow, with the udder being full, used to graze, and while it's grazing, milk used to flow from the udder simply because it was in a very jubilant, happy mood. See, this verse is basically telling us during the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, the clouds showered all the water that people needed. The necessities of the population are being provided very easily because leadership is present who are Krishna conscious. If they're truly Krishna conscious, then resources come quite nicely because any arrangement that they make is far-sighted. They're thinking about what is it which is going to allow the souls who are in my kingdom to progress from one stage to the other. So as a consequence, resources are bountifully made available because every other arrangement is nice. This particular statement is applicable to us. It's applicable that if one is Krishna conscious, then one's ability to take care of themselves and their responsibilities and to execute their responsibilities, especially if they're desiring Krishna consciousness wholesomely. In other words, they're really desiring Krishna consciousness as the future. That's taken care of by Krishna. It's a natural arrangement. It has to happen because we are aligning ourselves with the motivations of Shastra. We are aligning ourselves with the motivations of Sadhu Guru and naturally aligning ourselves with the motivations of Krishna. When we are aligning ourselves and our desires with their motivations and their interests, automatically then we are protected. This is like a child crossing the road where the parent would want to take care of a child who is dependent. So if the child is dependent on the parent to safely cross across the road, the child is being taken care of by the parent. Nadiyah samudra girayah savanaspati viruddha Falanti oshadayah sarvaha kamam anvrutatasya vai. The rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. This is a statement where they are basically giving because they are receiving. Yeah? If a kingdom and its people, the king and its people are very pious, they are giving, they are conducting sacrifices, they're offering so much, and as a consequence, they are able to receive from nature. Nadayo vyadyah kleshah daiva bhutatma hetavah ajata shatrava bhavan jantunam rajnikarichit. Because of the kings having no enemy, the living beings were not at any time disturbed by mental agonies, diseases, or excessive heat or cold. Here, the statement of the king having no enemy is also referring to the king having no bad habits, no weaknesses. Because in reality, enmity starts from within. If there are weaknesses in the heart, and if people have certain, I would say, failings, personal failings, it would naturally lead to conflicts. So because the king was pure and he had no ripus, weaknesses, as a consequence, the population and all other living entities in his kingdom were not disturbed by mental agonies, diseases, or excessive heat and cold. This is very important for us to recognize. Ushitva hastinapure masan katipayan harihi suhradam cha vishokaya swashuscha priyakamayaya. Sri Hari, Lord Sri Krishna, resided Hastinapur for a few months to pacify his relatives and please his own sister Subhadra. So he resided in Hastinapur for a few months and to please his sister Subhadra Mai because she had lost her only son Abhimanyu, who was also very newly married. And as a consequence, there was a lot of grief and Krishna wanted to be present present there so that he could give her some support. Amantraya chabhyuna gyatah parisvajya bivadyatam aruroha ratam kaishchit parishvakto bivaditah. Afterwards, when the Lord asked permission to depart and the king gave it, the Lord offered his respects to Maharaj Yudhishthira by bowing down at his feet, and the king embraced him. After this, the Lord, being embraced by others and receiving their obeisances, got onto his chariot. So this is a culture of relationship. Krishna was a younger cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira. So as a consequence, there really wasn't any kind of hesitation in Krishna offering obeisances to Yudhishthira Maharaj, even though Yudhishthira Maharaj knew that he was a supreme person. Yudhishthira Maharaj gave him blessings and embraced him. So this is an exchange of love, because Yudhishthira Maharaj felt, Krishna, you are the supreme person, but you're also my cousin, and this proximity is being displayed by you, by your acting as a younger brother, and I just love this. So he basically embraced him. Yeah. So this basic exchange is where there is a certain protocol being followed because someone is older and someone is younger, but there's also a personal relationship. If Krishna did not do this and walked away, then his relationship with Yudhishthira Maharaj would simply be as God and his servant. Instead, Krishna paid obeisances, conveying the fact that I'm not God, I'm your brother, I'm your younger cousin. He wanted to highlight the relationship because that's more valuable to Krishna. He enjoys the rasa which is flowing between himself and his devotee. To enhance that, he has to behave appropriately. Some stimulus has to be there. So Krishna pays obeisances to Maharaj Yudhishthira to convey the fact that I'm not here as God. This enthuses an exchange of love between him and Yudhishthira Maharaj, because now Yudhishthira Maharaj can qualify the person standing before him as a younger brother. Yeah? The same is being received by Krishna. The others, for example, Arjuna and Bhima, who are of equal age, they embrace, hug Krishna. Those of a younger age, like Nakul and Sahadev, paid obeisances to Krishna. When it is being done appropriately, then this exchange of love overpowers the concept of God and his servant. So the sweetness of the relationship is being highlighted. Krishna is encouraging that. He thinks that is more valuable. Subhadra Draupadi Kunti Virata Tanayatataha Gandhari Dhritarashtrascha Yutsur Gautamayamau Vrikorascha Daumyascha Striyo Matsutadayah Nasehi Reva Mukhyanto Viraham Samgya Viraham Sarangya Danavaha. Oh, Viraham Sangadanavaha. Sorry, Viraham Sangadanavaha. At this time, Subhadra, Draupadi, Kunti, Uttara, Gandhari, Dhritarashtra, Yuyutsu, Kripacharya, Nakula, Sahadev, Bhimasena, Daumya, and Satyavati all nearly fainted because it was impossible for them to bear separation from Lord Krishna. This is such an important revelation. If you notice, Mother Kunti, yes, was extraordinarily attached to Krishna. Mother Uttara, the mother of Parikshit Maharaj, was. Then you have Gandhari, Dhritarashtra, Yutsu, Kripacharya, Nakula, Sahadev, Bhimasen, Daumya, and Satyavati. These are all personalities who were not exactly close to Krishna in terms of their interactions as devotees. But they all fainted from the separation. What is unusual about the fact of the presence of Krishna? His presence in the particular surrounding was so overwhelming that even those who particularly were not related to him in the path of devotional service, they were basically losing their consciousness. They were losing their consciousness because they basically were experiencing this intense agony of him walking away. So there must have been something extraordinary which they were experiencing in his presence. When that presence was going away, they were experiencing the opposite, the agony. And the extraordinary experience was too intense for the body to bear. The body can't comprehend the emotions that come from the soul. When we see Lord Chaitanya during the Rath Yatra fainting while dragging the Rath Yatra, losing consciousness while chanting Harinam, it is because The ecstatic emotions of a bhakta can't be completely comprehended by this material body and consciousness. As a consequence, it shuts down just as much as it shuts down when there's heavy trauma. The same experience is so pleasant that the body can't really relate to the intense feelings that go on between the soul and Krishna. The body can't relate to it. It shuts down because the system can't really experience. So not desiring such an experience. Yeah, they were a part of the surrounding. But even though they were a part of the surrounding, they were experiencing things as if they were cultured to experience it and they were working towards coming close to Krishna. This is very fascinating to see. And this is experience, which is not very unusual. I'm just saying it is fascinating to see that his presence was so profound that everybody, regardless of whether they pursued a connection with him actively or not, were experiencing symptoms that were so unusual that they were passing out. Satsangan mukta dussango hatum notsahate buddha ketyamanam yasho yasya sakrit akarnya rochanam tasminyasta deha pattah saheran viraham katam dashyana sparsha samlapa sayanasana bhojanaihi. The intelligent who have understood the Supreme Lord in association with pure devotees and have become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas tolerate his separation? For they had been intimately associated with this person, seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, and sleeping, sitting, and dining with him. So the previous verse spoke of those who were not as close to Krishna. In the subsequent verse, in comparison, the question is being asked, even if you've just heard him once and you have just been with him for a few days, or if it's just consequential that you are there, if you can't bear the separation where you're going to basically lose consciousness because he's leaving and he's separating, what to say of his devotees? Sarvete nimishe rakesh akshais tamanudruta chetashah vikshanta sneha sambandha vichalesh tatra tatra. All their hearts were melting for him on the pot of attraction. They looked at him without blinking their eyes, and they moved hither and thither in perplexity. Basically, the mind, the intelligence, the physical body, none of this can comprehend the ecstasies of the soul. It basically becomes bewildered and starts shutting down, which is what is being seen here. Nyarundan udgalad baspam autkantya devaki sute niryati agara no badram itishyad bandavastriyah. The female relatives whose eyes were flooded with tears out of anxiety for Krishna came out of the palace. They could stop their tears only with great difficulty. They feared that tears would cause misfortune at the time of departure. They just did not want to present a sight which was more, I would say, synonymous with grief, but grief in the sense due to inauspicious circumstances. They basically wanted to ensure that they don't present any kind of sign which would be considered to be unfortunate. But they were crying and they're holding back their tears. Mridanga shanka beryascha vinapanava gomukaha dunduri anaka gantadya nedur dundubhyascha. While the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapura, different types of drums like the mridanga, dola, nagra, dunduri, and dundubi, and flutes of different types, the veena, the gomukha, and beri, all sounded together to show him honor. Out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on top of the palace and, smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. This is just to show that there were different levels of people there. There were some who could come close. There were some who couldn't. There were some who wanted to see him and wanted to interact with him, but they were restricted by social culture. So they got up on top of the palace roof and started showering flowers on him. Sitatapatram Jagrah Muktadhama Vibhushitam Ratnadandam Gudakeshah Priyaha Priyatatmasyaha. At that time, Arjuna, the great warrior and conqueror of sleep, who is the intimate friend of the most beloved Supreme Lord, took up an umbrella which had a handle of jewels and was embroidered with lace and pearls. Very opulent. Uddhava Satyakishaiva Vyajena Paramadbhute Vikiryamanah Kusumai Reje Madhupati Pati. Uddhava and Satyaki began to fan the Lord with decorated fans, and the Lord, as the master of Madhu, seated on scattered flowers, commanded them along the road. So here he's being called Madhupati. Yeah? The reason why he's called Madhupati is Madhu is sweetness. It's honey, but the quality of Madhu is sweetness. So he is basically the master of sweetness because he is sweet in so many different ways. He is the most sweet of all. And here is being called Madhupati, where they are fanning him, they are basically taking care of him. He is sitting on scattered flowers, and then he is commanding them along the road. Quite a sight. Ashriyan Tasishah Satyas Tatra Nanurupanu Rupascha Nirgunasya Gunatmanah. It was being heard here and there that the benedictions being paid to Krishna were neither befitting nor unbefitting because they were all for the Absolute, who was now playing the part of a human being. So the benedictions or the calling upon of benedictions, like some people might have said, Krishna, God bless you. Yeah. So, this would seem quite unusual because he is the supreme person. Krishna, please be safe. May the demigods protect you. Maybe some a devotee of a demigod, they would have said this. Yeah. They would have said, may such and such personality whom I worship protect you as you go along to Dwaraka on this journey. So here it is being said, some were appropriate and some were inappropriate, but none of these benedictions are basically, you can say, you can't classify them in the general sense as being befitting or not befitting, because all of this are absolutely applicable for him because he is the Absolute. Yeah, he's playing the role of a human being, so people are giving him benedictions. Yeah, but at the same time, those benedictions themselves can't be classified as being proper or improper because he's the Absolute. He can receive them and not receive them too. There really is nothing there which is contradictory. There really is nothing contradictory about him. Now, the example that's being given by Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada in this purport, is that he was a butter thief. You see, now we call him a thief, Makanchor. He ran away from the battle in Mathura. We call him Ranchor. Yeah? Ranchor is basically a coward who basically went away from the battle of Mathura. This is being said in the context of him wanting to move to Dwaraka. So the point is, the idea of Krishna being called a thief, does it befit him or does it not befit him? Because in the normal circumstance, if it is completely mundane, a thief is punished. It's very inglorious to be called a thief. Yeah, it's very insulting to be called a thief. Now Krishna is being called a thief. He's Makanchor. Now, does that befit him? Does not befit him because he's Absolute. Anything you offer upon him, it's glorious. He can be called a coward. He can be called someone who ran away from battle, Ranchor. He's celebrated as Ranchor Raya. He's celebrated as Makanchor. Even if he does things which are considerably, of low class in the mundane sphere, because he is Absolute, there's a sweetness about it and it's glorification. Anyonyamasit sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasham kauravendra purastri sarvashruti manohara. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is sung in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. The hymns of the Vedas are spoken where there is such formality and structure in describing the Lord's glories. Here, it's coming from the heart. Because it is coming from the heart, even though these ladies of Hastinapura, they were not very well trained in Sanskrit verse, they may not be great scholars who can compose poetry, their praise of Krishna was considered to be much more sweeter and much more, I would say, uh, powerful, simply because there was this, it came from their hearts. This came from their hearts. Savaikilayam Purusha Puratano Eka Ashit Abhishe Atmani Agre Gunebhyo Jagadatmanishware Nimilitatman Nishishupta Shaktishu. They said, the ladies of Hastinapura said, here he is, the original personality of Godhead, as we definitely remember him. He alone existed before the manifested creation of the modes of nature, and in him only, because he is the Supreme Lord, all living beings merge as if sleeping at night, their energy suspended. Now, first they're talking about Krishna's Purusha avatars, Krishna's manifestation, Krishna as God. Saeva bhuyo nijavirya choditam swajiva mayam prakritim shishkrasatim anama rupatmani rupanamani vidit samano nusasara shastrakrit. The personality of Godhead, again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels, the living entities, placed them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. Sava ayam yat padam matra surayo jitendriya nirjita matarishvanaha pashyanti bhakti utkhalita malatmana nanvesha sattvam parimarstum arhati. Here is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness by dint of rigid devotional service and full control of life and the senses. And that is the only way to purify existence. Savay ayam saki anugyata satkato vedeshu guhyeshu shaguhyavadibihi yayeka isho jagadatma leelaya shrajati avati attina tatra sajate. Oh dear friends, here's the very personality of Godhead, whose attractive and confidential pastimes are described in the confidential parts of Vedic literature by his great devotees. It is he only who creates, maintains, and annihilates the material world, and yet remains unaffected. Yada hi addharmena tamodiyo nripa jivanti tatraisha hi satvatah kila datte bhagam satyam ritam dayam yasho bhavaya rupani dadad yuge yuge. Whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals in the lowest modes of existence, the Lord in his transcendental form manifests his supreme power, the truth positive, shows special mercy to the faithful, performs wonderful activities, and manifests various transcendental forms as is necessary in different periods and ages. Aho alam slagyatmam yadokulam aho alam punyatmam madorvanam Yadesha pumsham rishabhah shriyapatihi swajanmana chankramane chanchati. Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathura, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood. Aho bataswar yashasas tiraskari Kusastali punya yashaskari bhuvaha pashyanti nityam yad anugrahe shitam smitavalokam swapatim smagyat prajaha. Undoubtedly, it is wonderful that Dwaraka has defeated the glories of the heavenly planets and has enhanced the celebrity of the earth. The inhabitants of Dwaraka are always seeing the soul of all living beings, Krishna, in his loving feature. He glances at them and favors them with sweet smiles. Nunamrita snana hute dineshwaraha samachito hi asya grihita panibihi pibantiyaha saki adamritam muhur vrajastriyah sammumuhur yad ashayah. Oh friends, again, this is a prayer which is being offered by the ladies of Hastinapura. Oh friends, just think of his wives whose hands he has accepted, how they must have undergone vows, baths, fire sacrifices, and perfect worship of the Lord of the universe to constantly relish now the nectar from his lips. The damsels of Rajabhumi would often faint just by expecting such favors. So here they're talking about his wives, and because these are women who are praising Krishna and they're seeing him go in the street, they are saying there must have been something quite extraordinary which his wives would have done that they are able to kiss him. This is actually saying constantly relish the nectar from his lips. Yeah? So they are praising the birth and the activities of his wives in Dwaraka who are able to experience conjugal love with Krishna. And then they're also basically talking about the damsels of Rajabhumi, the gopis, and how they are so special that they are not his wives, but yet they experience love with him. In other words, this is before he was 16. At the age of 16, he goes to Dwaraka. So basically, they're talking about before 16 and after 16, and they're talking about the good fortune of the women who have come into his life and who have been able to experience him either as a boyfriend or as a husband. Yeah? So you have Swakiya and Parakiya, and that is being seen here. So it's quite unusual where they are looking at him and saying how fortunate they should be. So it's quite natural, being women, they're attracted because he's all attractive. And it's quite natural for them to think how wonderful it would be if I were to be his wife or a girlfriend. It's quite natural. So that is being displayed here. What is quite unusual about this particular verse is that there is no perversion in this verse. If there was perversion, a complete renunciate and a completely liberated personality such as Sukadev Goswami would not have composed and included it in his narration of the Srimad Bhagavatam. What is glorious about our acharyas? They have written volumes of literature on the interaction of Krishna with the damsels of Braja. And these loving exchanges between Krishna and very confidential exchanges between him and his friends, the female friends of Braja, they are basically composed in poetry, and there are so many wonderful books. All these books were written by sages who were maintaining complete celibacy. So it was a complete paradigm. You give up this particular aspect of sense gratification, which is a perversion in this particular world, but you meditate on the transcendental activity of Krishna, engaging in interacting with his consorts. It's quite an unusual, I would say, polarity where the acharyas of Vrindavan have rejected mundane sense gratification. They're complete celibates, they're very strict, but their entire meditation is on this most wonderful aspect of Krishna and his extraordinary exchange with those who are beloved to him in Braja and beyond. What is unusual about it is because this is transcendental subject matter. So this is perfectly purifying for even someone who is liberated like Sukadev Goswami. Because the party who is involved is Krishna, who is transcendental. So there's absolutely no perversion in the statement of a woman who is in Hastinapur, who is looking at Krishna and wanting to be his wife, thinking how wonderful would it be on, in having this romantic dalliance with him. So this is being included in Srimad Bhagavatam, showing how amazing it is. This is a contradiction. Why? Because someone who has a complete celibate and very strict celibacy and very strict rules as his lifestyle meditates on this extraordinary transcendental exchange of Krishna. And that is the extraordinary nature of this particular transcendental topic, where you can include it. It's extraordinarily purifying. It does not contaminate. Why doesn't it contaminate? Because it's Krishna. It's been written by someone who is completely free of the aspects of the modes of nature. So this is wonderful to read and understand that two contradictions can coexist in harmony. Something which is to be rejected of this world can be cherished of the spiritual sky. But one thing to remember, these are very sacred grounds. Very, very sacred grounds. These are very special, very sacred, very confidential grounds. If one is not sufficiently sacred, they should not try and venture into this. Those who are sufficiently sacred have written about it in the Bhagavatam. They could venture into it. They could comment on it. They could engage in writing about it. But if one is not sufficiently sacred, then one doesn't engage in activity which is considered to be sacred, because that is surely a contamination, that's a deviation. Yeah. So there cannot be any pretension in wanting to read the confidential pastimes of Krishna by those who still have a lot of motivation for engaging in sense gratification on this plane. If there's such engagement here and such thoughts come and there's such enthusement and engagement of sense gratification on this plane, they are not qualified to enter into the sacred grounds of interaction of Krishna with the damsels of Braja. That's why, without sufficient protection, sufficient purification, these very transcendental, confidential topics are not supposed to be broached, because we are not sufficiently sacred and we can't really appreciate the sacredness of this exchange. But those who are liberated relish it. Why? Because they are sufficiently sacred. This is such a contradiction where you give up everything of this world, but you meditate on the same topic if it is related to Krishna. And that is liberating, that is rewarding, that is transcendental. Yeah, quite unusual. Ya virya sulkena hrita swayamvare pramatya chaidya pramukhan hi sushminah pradyumna sambamba sutadyayo para yaschahrita baumavade sahasrasah. The children of these ladies of Pradyumna, Samba, Amba, etc., ladies like Rukmini, Satyabhama, and Jambavati, were forcibly taken away by him from their Swayamvara ceremonies after he defeated many powerful kings headed by Shishupala. And other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Baumasura and thousands of his assistants. All of these ladies are glorious. So he acted as a Kshatriya would, and because the women desired him as a husband, he forcibly took them away from the Swayamvara ceremonies with conflict. And that was because the women desired to be with him. Mother Rukmini, Satyabhama, Jambavati desired to be with Krishna. As a consequence, he took them away from circumstances which they didn't want to be in. He married 16,000 plus, I would say, women who were kept in captivity by Baumasura. He killed him and then he married them. These women in general would have been considered to be contaminated because the Asura had kidnapped them for sense gratification and to satisfy his carnal desire. They would have been considered contaminated in the general sense, but because they came in touch with the Supreme Lord, they are Lakshmis. Because they came in touch with the Supreme Lord, they are Lakshmis, because Krishna delivered them. Eta param stritvam apastapeshalam nirasta saucham bata sadhu kurvate yasham grihat pushkara lochana patir najata apaiti aratbir hridisprashan. All these women auspiciously glorified their lives despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. He expanded himself and he was always with them. Evam vida gadantinam sagiraha purayoshitam niriksanena abhinandan sashmitena yayau harihi. While the ladies of the capital Hastinapura were greeting him and talking in this way, the Lord, smiling, accepted their good greetings, and casting the grace of his glance over them, he departed from the city. Ajata shatruh pratanam gopitaya madudvishah parebhyah sankitah snehat prayunkta chatur anginim. Maharaj Yudhishthira, although no one's enemy, engaged 4 divisions of defense. horse, elephant, chariot, and army to accompany Lord Krishna, the enemy of the Asuras. The Maharaj did this because of the enemy and also out of affection for the Lord. Okay, we have 2 more verses and we are done. Atad Duragatan Saurihi Kauravan Virahutaran Shanivatya Dridam Snigdhan Prayat Swanagarim Priyahi. Out of profound affection for Lord Krishna, the Pandavas, who were of the Kuru dynasty, accompanied him a considerable distance to see him off. They were overwhelmed with the thought of future separation. The Lord, however, persuaded them to return home, and he proceeded towards Dwaraka with his dear companions. The next verse, O Shaunaka, the Lord then proceeded towards Kurujangala, Panchala, Surasena, the land on the bank of the river Yamuna, Brahmavatta, Kurukshetra, Matsya, Saraswata, the province of the desert, and the land of water. After crossing these provinces, he gradually reached the Savira and Abira provinces, then to the west of these reached Dwaraka at last. So fortunate is India, Bharatvarsha, that the Lord's footprints would be in so many different places in Bharatvarsha. It is so fortunate. Tatra 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 hatatrair harihi pratyudetarhanah sayam beje disham paschad gavisto gam gatastada. On his journey through these provinces, he was welcomed, worshipped, and given various presentations. In the evening, in all these places, the Lord suspended his journey to perform evening rites. This was regularly observed after sunset. So with this ends the 10th chapter. So we will stop. I think I went over by around half hour, but I wanted to conclude the chapter. So we had the initial discussion of the chapter in terms of its essence. The essence is on being able to depend on Krishna and to allow him to make arrangements in our life. We spoke of karma, we spoke of desires, we spoke of destiny and the modification of destiny. We spoke of how one should position themselves in life so that we could give ourselves enough room to modify our future. We spoke of what is good to desire. We also spoke of how to include Krishna in our plans. We also spoke of basically the fact that if we are facing difficulties now, it's because of the past. If we modify our desires today, then we have the ability to modify the future. So we'll end here and we'll see how many questions we can take depending on if there are questions.
Hare Krishna. You mentioned that destiny can be changed, but
yes.
we also hear that whatever amount of money you do, that's all you're going to get. You can't even get a farthing extra, or the amount of happiness that you're destined is all that you're going to get. So this sounds a bit confusing.
Yeah, the modification of destiny requires power. If one is going to be situated in the mode of passion and ignorance, there really is very little scope for us to be able to change the future, because our life is going to be as designated based on the modes of nature. If I am in passion, I am going to engage in building desires in my life which are passionate, and my life is going to go the way of my desires. And because I'm in passion, I don't have the ability to think through and make modifications. But if one is able to situate themselves in goodness by following certain precepts, then there's a greater room for maneuvering in life. And when you have the ability to maneuver in life, then you have the ability to change what you can. So let's look at what happened in the past. You will read this in every Purana. We will read it in the Ramayana. We will read it in Mahabharata. We especially see that the demons are very good at this, the demons. The point I'm trying to make is not so much the quality of consciousness of the demon. I'm talking about how a demon recognizes what is missing in life, and then they use the modes of nature by going through great austerity. The demon being in the mode of ignorance goes through intense tapasya, putting great suffering to himself, achieves what needs to be achieved so that he can modify what is required in life. The way we need to move around is to use resources that are conducive for us as devotees. The resources that are conducive for us are in the mode of goodness. As a consequence, we position ourselves in goodness. That would release a lot of availability of resources in the subtle plane. We will come in touch with the right kind of people. We would go to institutions which carry the aim of goodness. We would engage in activities which practically encourage such. That in turn would allow us and give us an opportunity to exercise our free will and to choose a path going forward. So that's how it's going to happen. So the general statement that you can't make a farthing of more than what you have desired, you see, that's a statement which is absolutely true, because if you're going to talk about the mode of passion and ignorance, there is no room to maneuver. On the contrary, if you're in the mode of goodness, and you can increase the mode of goodness by doing various activities in the mode of goodness, then that gives you the maneuvering room. I hope this clarified.
Yes, it does help. So, sometimes people think that it's not worth trying to do more because you're not going to get any more anything. But what you're saying is if you're in the mode of goodness, you can achieve other things.
Exactly. Because in the mode of goodness, there's greater level of freedom. Say, for example, in the Bhagavatam, we read in the Bhagavatam in the 3rd canto, we are going to read about Kardama Muni. This great sage, he was in the forest performing austerities because that was his nature. He was an ascetic, he was a yogi, and he was performing yogic sadhana. His wife, Devahuti, was serving him. She was a princess, but she was serving him while he used to go into meditation. His meditation used to last 5,000 years. So he used to be alone, serving her husband who used to be lost in a trance. Now, the thing is, when it came for him to please his wife because she made some sacrifices, he basically created an airplane. It is said in Shastra, he created the facilities for sense gratification because he was used to staying under a tree, and he found that the opportunity, or rather the whole idea of arranging things nicely before he could, satisfy his wife in certain ways, he required the surrounding to be properly situated. But his yogic power gave him extraordinary power to create, just as if he's another Brahma. He could create an entire airplane where he could basically create servants, he could create the facility for him. How did this occur? It occurred because he had accumulated resources while he was in yogic trance. Subtle resources. The subtle wealth, which was already accumulated, the piety, which was already accumulated, is real wealth. When you combine that piety with desires, the desires manifest. When you don't have any piety because we are situated in passion, we are situated in ignorance, then we can't really manifest our desires. And as a consequence, many people go through a lot of frustration because they have desires, they don't have the resources to buy them, the subtle resources to manifest them. So that's the difference. Does it make sense?
Definitely, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure.
Any
other question? Yeah, Haribo?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions regarding recent. It's been celebrated like 50 years of moon landing, and in India also Chandrayaan-2, and so much news about all these and about a lot of latest technologies, all these. So my question is that is it really great to reach moon, or in comparative like what Prabhupada achieved with coming with 40 rupees and some few books to America, and the way the Hare Krishna movement is manifested, expanded, keep going on all these. But we don't see any mainstream media talking about this when it's 15 years of ISKCON's establishment, all this. So how do you see this, bro? Like for me, at least, I'm seeing like whenever I I visit ISKCON temple, and the way every day they are doing the deity worship and every other program, it's like once in a while, every day the way they are maintaining, it amazes me. It doesn't amaze me that someone going to moon after effort, putting effort for 10 years or something. How to see this, bro? Like, what's your comment on this?
There would always be expeditions of wanting to achieve things. The Mars expedition, Moon expedition, thinking that somehow or the other, the planet on our planet doesn't have the ability to give life. As a consequence, we need to find an alternative. See, these are all aspects of exploration, and this has been done in the past. This has been done so many times in the past by so many different personalities. And I'm talking about in every age, there have been people who basically have completely moved away from devotional service and they have tried to accomplish things. In every age, every yuga, there are people who have done this. The point I'm trying to make is there's nothing new. There's a material phenomena of not being informed. They are motivated by their desires. They put money behind those desires. They make those accomplishments. And then there is a media which is completely unreliable, which blows everything up out of proportion. So I reflect on it too at times. I reflect on the fact that, why isn't Srila Prabhupada being glorified as one of the biggest and most profound exponents of, I would say, Indian culture and I would say the system that was offered? Because why isn't it being done so? Why are we praising so many other systems which basically are not considered to be so transformative in the West specifically? And the fact remains is that Srila Prabhupada's contribution was genuine. It genuinely transformed people. We were not after any accolades. We are not after any pat in the back. Whatever fame we get out of our activity is given by Krishna. Whatever we have to do in the future is also given by Krishna. So the point I'm trying to make is that this is nature. People will not be appreciative of things they can't understand. They can't understand transcendence. Those who can understand and come in touch with transcendence are rare. So this group of devotees whom you know around the world, including yourself, are quite rare in the context. So the rarity has to be appreciated. This is not very common. We can't recognize it as common. It is not common at all.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, and similarly, Prabhu, like when it comes to history, also we keep because we see all the time whatever people talking about and the news talking about our history, all this. When it comes to the Vaishnava acharyas and their contributions and the Mahabharata, I feel this is the real history. But so far, we were kept away from this history. It's been like in school, everywhere they teach all nonsense, and it may be few or facts, but definitely there is a different motive in presenting that history, like the invasion of Muslims or British, all these. But the facts are there, dates and all those are there. But the motives and what damage they did, that they don't talk, because it will create disturbance in people's mentality, and they can't tolerate. They know the truth that what happened really in history. And yeah, I think
It's
about
true.
any, can we expect that there will be time when they really teach the real history instead of telling all these lies and with the different motives? Because I'm asking this because I feel like now when I come in touch with ISKCON and uh, learning about different Vaishnava acharyas, all that, this is what I should have learned throughout my school days. All that nonsense, I was taught something useless, and I wasted my time, entire life.
Which is the
So
case, because the point is that this being a very rare gift, to understand the truth, because you can understand the world after you come in touch with Srila Prabhupada's books. After you come in touch with Harinam and after you come in touch with pure devotional service, you would suddenly find that the world becomes very clear. You can pick up any book and you would have a greater level of understanding and discernment after you pick up Srila Prabhupada's books. This is the case. So this is a very rare opportunity. As much as a devotee, we want this to be spread to every street and we want everybody to take up Krishna consciousness. There's a certain realistic sense as well. that not many are qualified. This only comes based on adhikar. Some who come in also leave. We have observed that. They come into ISKCON and then they leave. How about that? Yeah? Forget about those who don't know anything about our acharyas. There are those who come in and then they leave.
Yes.
Yeah? How about that? So the point I'm trying to make is that this is a very rare opportunity, which is the reason why you don't see things as much as you would of something which is more mundane and something which is, motivated by politics. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we ultimately shouldn't worry so much about material nature. We should worry constantly about how we can understand material nature so that we could present our gifts to people. So understanding what is going out there is a must. We don't want to be ignorant, but we want to understand it in the context of being able to present Krishna consciousness. We could desire this, we could distribute all over the world, but then the point I'm trying to make is that this is an extraordinary gift, and so it's not going to come easily to people. There's going to be a lot of struggle for them to accept things that we offer. And this is being seen, even if they come in, people don't accept it. They leave after some time. They say, I have this excuse or that excuse. This person didn't look at me this way. That person didn't look at me this way. So many different excuses to just give up. The point I'm trying to make is we have a very rare gift and it has to be recognized. Second, we want to focus our energies in a way where we can use our energies efficiently. It may not help to go after, trying to modify things which are very superficial. Instead, it might help to deepen our faith so that we could give more and more people Krishna consciousness. The Krishna consciousness becomes a household, I would say, adaptation. People take up Krishna consciousness at a very deep level in a house by house basis. That is something which we can surely think of and aspire to. There's very little that can be done about the desires of others who are in the lower modes.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Just I like few points and to on our discussion. Like one is you feel the presence of Krishna. So when you go to a temple, bow down in the temple, so you feel the presence of Krishna. So same like in our house, in every room, if you place a deity and feel the same, then actually house will be very peaceful. That is one thing. So we'll not have any discussions in any room, which creates a lot of problem in life. The second point is, I was under assumption that like karma and the desires, they are actually interrelated. My desires in my current life are the result of my karma or my past activities. But the point you mentioned is like, we can utilize our free will if you're under the mode of goodness. So that's really good point. So being in the mode of goodness, we can modify our desires and change our karma as well. So
exactly. So I'll comment on the second point first. I'll comment on the second point first. So if you could put yourself on mute because there's some static coming in. So the second point of karma and desires, yes, based on the karmic reactions we bring from the previous lifetime, our desires would also come up based on that. There is no doubt. Because the karmic reactions put us in a certain social setting. It gives us a certain kind of body. It gives us a certain kind of economic circumstance, or I would say so many different things are based on the karma that we bring in. And as a consequence, because we are exposed to certain environments and we say, or exposed to certain impulses, our desires also come from those impulses. But then desires can also come by coming in touch with faith. So for example, desires can come by coming in touch with Bhagavatam. Desires can come coming in touch with Harinam. Desires can come coming in touch with the Vaishnavas. The point I'm trying to make is there are desires from karma which have their origin in our karmic reactions, and there are desires that can be cultivated by coming in touch with the source. Both are true. And what we are trying to say is cultivate those more and more if you come in touch with those powerful Krishna conscious aspects, and as a consequence, desires would also become Krishna conscious. This would give us an opportunity to modify the baggage that we have bought. That is how we change our future. So that is how we make changes to our future. This requires being in the mode of goodness. You see, if you're in the mode of goodness, you're attracted to a certain kind of food, you're rejecting a certain kind of food, you're accepting certain kind of company, you're rejecting certain kind of company. Yeah, you want to be entertained in certain ways, you reject certain kind of entertainment. All of this is modified by the consciousness that we are in. So positioning ourselves in goodness allows us the freedom to include more and more Krishna consciousness in our life. The mode of goodness is not a goal for us, but it is certainly a platform which is more efficient in taking us closer to Krishna than passion and ignorance. That's the point I was wanting to make. And your first point about having a deity in every room, serve the deity in one room nicely, that would be nice. Because if you have a deity in every room and you don't take care of them, it's a problem. So I know that you would take care of them if you had to keep deities, but I'm saying just keeping them in one room and then serving them very nicely will develop the consciousness that the house belongs to Krishna, to the deity. By developing such consciousness that every room belongs to that master who is in this room, then we would be able to utilize the time and the energies in that particular place nicely.
Yes, Prabhu. Like sometimes when I need to scold my daughter, I take her to the bedroom thinking that Krishna is only in this room. So I need to cut this thinking now. That is very nice, Prabhu. Yeah.
Sure.
One final small question is like when I mean in a daily life, how can we understand what is Krishna's arrangement and what is the activity of karma, like which has to be karma? So because when we are about to take any action, how can we decide whether it is because of karma or my desire? I'm just taking this action, whether I should take up that action or not.
Yeah. So we addressed it in the class, and I was saying that there may never be a time when we fully understand whether what we can do and what we are doing is according to Krishna's desire. So instead, what we must do is examine if what we are trying to accomplish is related to improving our devotional service. So do a check and balance. Practically observe and see if it's going to enhance your ability to associate, serve, chant, etc. And then what you also need to do is basically offer prayers to Krishna, that Krishna, I do not know if I'm on the right track. So I'm giving you a free hand. Do what you need to do so that if I'm taking decisions and I'm having desires which are not in line with what you want for me, then please sabotage these desires. So that's the other way of looking at it as well.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. Any other question or comment?
Yes, Prabhu. Can I ask you one last question?
Sure.
This is regarding see, Prabhu, in daily life we are seeing so many things, events are happening, and if we have a habit of following news or whatever our old habits, like we were attached with some sports or movies, and it's not that easy immediately we can leave everything. But certainly mind tricks us. Okay, it's okay, at a certain level you need to understand, but whatever my observation is, when I go into something happening around, and it will trigger interest in something else, like the example of moon landing or Chandrayaan 2. Then there will be a lot of information on YouTube. There is no end. Like we may end up, when what happened, Russians what did, Americans what they did, how they did, and there is a lot of interesting way they present it. So it takes like maybe hours also, hours of our time. Isn't it wrong to go into such topics, even though they are not against for regulatory principles or anything, so that we are losing in our limited time, we are losing some certain time, which is not non-Krishna consciousness? I have this doubt, and that too, still I have interest. Like I feel like, oh, we should know what's going on around, and sometimes I watch what these politicians are talking, the way they speak, everything it's like kind of entertainment or statements they give.
So I understand your point. So yeah, I understand it. See, the point I'm trying to make is this is a matter of, there are two levels here. One, you can very quickly glance in news just to be aware of what is happening in the world. That is one. If our consciousness has not risen above higher levels, then we would be attracted by all of these phenomena. So what we must do is be very careful in wasting time, because most important is time. We want to see how we could use our time in the service of the Lord. That's a very important state of consciousness. When time management becomes a big priority, and we're moving towards time management very carefully, because time belongs to Krishna, that's a state of consciousness as well. So what I'm trying to say is that this is basically a problem with consciousness. There is no need to go into deep research if I have so much to do in terms of Krishna consciousness. There really is no need. But why would we do that? Because our consciousness basically attracts us and says, listen to this, listen to that, listen to this, read that, because all of this is important. So it's a matter of us being able to reject it. So it will take time. As time goes by and as we move forward in our consciousness, then we would know how to manage our time, and we would reject things which are not helping.
Yes, bro. Yeah, one important point I observed here is, like, as you said, this is nothing new. All these things in every yuga, so many people tried all these in different ways. When we keep that in mind, maybe it will not amaze us that much, like, oh, this is exciting or this is something new.
Exactly.
It already tried and tested in every generation. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, bro. Thank you so much.
Sure. If there aren't any questions, we will end here and we will meet again the following week. If there are questions after this and you're forgotten, you could very well post it in the WhatsApp group. I would be very happy to address it there as well. Okay, so we can end here. So thank you very much for being a part of this session, and we'll meet again the following week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sorry.